She's going to tell us about all the fantastic things she's been out seeing. Hello, Kate.
Hello there. I'll tell you about two of them.
Two of them, that's great.
That'll do.
Yep.
And by the way, has anyone had a look at that beautiful day out there?
Oh,
it's a shame to be
stunning.
inside.
Yeah.
Fluffy clouds sort of just teasing us out there. Beautiful blue sky.
Scudding is the word.
Scudding clouds. Lovely. Mm-hmm. Back to the theatre. This is Living by Ash Flanders, who's one of my local faves, I have to say. This is at the Malthouse Theatre. Ash Flanders has done some eccentric work with Sisters Grimm, his company with Declan Green over the years, and various other things. And this is, as he describes it, I believe, his first regular kind of play, like a three-act. Well, it's not a three-act play, but it's a play about real people in real time in a real naturalistic set. So it's about something that happened to him, about a young man, a gay couple, whose partner is diagnosed with a serious illness, leukemia, and you'd assume in this situation that the carer would be appreciated by the loved one who is suffering, but in fact that person seems to lose control and lose all sense of the quality of the relationship, I suppose is the way to say it. So if you think you're going to be, loving, attentive, resilient in the face of such a crisis, you might need to think again. I'm sure some people have experienced this. Things aren't always as nice and pretty and sweet as we'd hoped they'd be. So Ash Flanders based his play, as I said, on his own experience. It's Will King plays Will, and Marcus McKenzie plays Hugh, his partner, who is suffering this ordeal and the indignities of treatment for leukemia. And Will's fast losing his patience and appears to have completely lost his sense of humour and slid into despair. And Hugh, who's the ill person, has become ungrateful, mean-spirited, black-humoured, interestingly, and altogether pretty beastly as a patient and as a partner. So it's excruciating to watch, really, but also there are hilarious moments in it. It's very, very funny. It takes place in a luxurious rental property in Hepburn, spa capital. Hugh's insisted they spend a few days, and they invite their three older female friends, single female friends, who are kind of their party friends, entertainment value, played by three wonderful performers. These three women share a theatre history. They've all become something different in their older years. So Flanders' crackling dialogue is 2 parts wit and 1 part snarky, really. It's pretty funny. So the 5 characters are really entertaining. They're entertaining us as much as each other, and they verbally abuse each other, and they snark and snipe, and it's just wicked humour, but it feels real. And the friendships are based on rivalry, argument, resentment, their common history, and all of which Flanders mines relentlessly. And Matthew Lutton has directed it with rapid-fire pace, and he balances the comedy and the tragedy. So this is a very entertaining piece and quite a surprise for Ash Flanders, really. I think it is a surprising piece, but it's worth seeing, and it runs until the 30th of July. And I'm going to talk about Romeo and Juliet, and we have a second guest here.
We do. We were at the same show. In fact, I waved at you and you waved at someone else.
Yes, well, I thought I was waving. I don't even remember waving at anybody, but then anyway, you got it.
So our special guest is super producer Nick Tolhurst.
Super, thank you very much, yes.
I didn't know whether I should introduce or leave it to you, but thank you.
Okay. You fire away there, Kate.
So Romeo and Juliet by Mr. William Shakespeare. This is performed by Bell Shakespeare, this version, isn't it, at the Fairfax Theatre, Nick? And there we were, both of us, in the studio. It's a new production, and I think it's imaginatively directed by Peter Evans, and mostly successfully. And it balances the comedy and the romance of Shakespeare's text. And as I was saying to Nick earlier, what's unusual about Romeo and Juliet is that it starts as a romantic comedy. I mean, he had a chunk of plays, a number of plays that were romantic comedies, and others that are tragedies, but this combines both. So it starts as the romantic comedy, and the wedding happens in the first half, secretly. In a romantic comedy, it usually happens at the end. And then it turns into the tragedy. And we know Romeo and Juliet die.
Yes, well, this is the thing. Everyone knows what happens in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
There's no spoilers.
No.
But it was you said it was light and then dark the way it was staged.
And lit as well, because it's very well, beautifully lit and interestingly lit in the first half, and then it becomes almost a bit too dark.
Too dark for me. Yeah.
Yeah. But it opens with, what I found interesting was the opening with the actors all in a plain black costume. And for me, I don't know if it was what other people picked up from it, but I thought all of these people from these two clans, the Capulets and the Montagues, are indistinguishable one from the other at that
That's
point.
what I thought.
Yeah, oh good, I'm glad.
I don't know why what that was, though.
I think they might have intended that because I suppose for me the point is they're all just humans. They're all
Yes,
people.
people's
And
people.
yet they become tribal when they take on their tribal regalia, their costumes, which they start to don shortly after that opening period. So they're all a single group, and then they start to split and fragment into these two tribes, these clans that have been warring for, I don't know how many hundreds of years, probably a lot. And you talked about the design, the staging earlier, and you said you weren't so
Yeah,
keen on that.
it was very, very simple, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But it was underlit in the second half, and I couldn't quite see what was going on in some ways. It looked a bit drab for me too. So I think the festive scenes, the ballroom, I thought the dancing went on too long.
Bit long, the party. Although it built up the party atmosphere as they started to take on or don these colourful pieces of costume over the top of the black. So that's when things started to
And
change.
I thought also, now reflecting on it, some of the dances weren't good, and some of the choreography was just... It just didn't ring true to me. But this is the thing about this production. I thought there was some fabulous moments, and there was some great acting, especially from the older stages like Robert Menzies,
Yes.
who just knows how to do Shakespeare,
Oh, yeah.
make it sound live. The nurse was wonderful,
Yes.
funnier than I've ever seen. But Juliet had some really great moments, and their love scenes were funny and sparky. But there were times when it sounded like the director said, "I'll just go and just say these lines," because she had that declaiming sort of role that people have, when they don't know what they're talking about,
Yeah.
they do Shakespeare.
Well, I think there were some really interesting interpretations of the text, and it became very funny. I know there's a lot of comedy in it, but this was a particularly funny first half,
Yes.
I think. Really laugh
And
out loud
successful in
funny.
that respect,
Very
yeah.
successful. And I think the relationship had that sort of adolescent, passion and infatuation, and Romeo was played by, his name is Jacob Warner. He was a callow, naive and awkward.
I thought it was a bit suburban, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Well, I think they were playing it in a quite
Yes.
modern way.
Yeah.
Bit suburban, I didn't think that. Wildly impulsive and sort of made completely foolish by being in love with this girl.
That worked, yeah.
Yeah. What I found interesting was that the Juliet, Rose Riley, she's feisty, she's mercurial, she's rebellious and secretive and all those things that 13, 14-year-old girls are now. But some of it felt just that little bit too modern, that she was just a bit too worldly wise and sexually knowingly seductive. But I know they do it sort of not realising the outcomes often, these 14, 15-year-olds. But I don't know if in Shakespeare's period that would have been the case. But this has been hurled into the present.
Yeah.
So it's a bit different, I suppose.
Okay.
So I just want to go back to Robert Menzies before we sort of, wind up as Friar Lawrence. He really is a jewel in this production. He does capture the essence of the poetry, and he has that beautiful, resonant and very recognisable voice. And the one moment for me that really captured everything about this tragedy is he walks into the crypt and he sees Romeo and he's dead, and he says just the name, Romeo. And it felt to me like that embodied every bit of the grief, the loss, the sense of he wanted these families united and he'd failed. One word. That's Acton for you.
It is too. And it's very much worth seeing as a production overall.
I think so.
Thank you, Kate and Nick. We'll be back in just a moment.